welcome here in our studio in Sarakunda. This is Star TV News with me, Maimuna Fadera. In the headlines tonight, National Assembly members yet to decide on the state of emergency despite its due. Finance Minister Njai and ACP Secretary General hold telebriefing on COVID-19 support to the member states post-Cotonou negotiations. Gambia Police Force sets emergency tax regulation to help curb the spread of COVID-19. Textile shop owners hit hard by COVID-19 as quarantine approaches. CityLink Austin Banjul implements a beach cleaning exercise on the international scene. Political campaigns end ahead of elections in Burundi. Lack of funds put conservation projects at risk in Kenya. Parts of Europe ease coronavirus curbs as new infections drop. Well, those were our headlines, and now the news in details. The state of emergency is due to end today, Monday, 28 May 2020. A motion for it was presented before the lawmakers since Saturday, 16th May 2020, received the support of 23 legislators and was rejected by 25 legislators out of the 47 lawmakers were present. Sitting was adjourned till today, but it did not hold. While Dado Cham was there, this is her report.
The motion was presented before the National Assembly by Gambian Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Tambidu, who said that there is no doubt that the coronavirus pandemic continues to pose a clear danger to the Gambia and remains deadly. Therefore, the government needs to continue taking measures that will reduce the transmission of the virus in order to prevent a further spread of the virus, and they understand the consequences hardship that all Gambians may face. He said the opposition members for the motion believe that the extension of a public emergency for another period is unjustifiable, considering the living condition of the people. However, the National Assembly member for Serekunda, Honorable Halifa Saleh, believes that by adjourning today's sitting, it will give them time to conceive so as to resolve the non-factual difficulties.
So by adjourning, it gives us time to go and look at the issues, and maybe we'll end up resolving the conceptual difficulties. It's a conceptual problem, and we believe that once each of us conceive the issue as it should be conceived, we'll know what to do. And it's to fight the illness, but we are also trying to understand the hardship and what to do about it. What to do about the hardship. That is the importance of the National Assembly as an oversight institution, is to be able to tell the executive, yes, you have this regulation, but it is having this impact. So review it. That is the role of the National Assembly. So it is not collaborating with an executive, it is monitoring the activities of the executive. And once we fail to see that the role of the National Assembly is to monitor the activities of the executive and try to ensure that what is done is reasonable and justifiable to be able to address the pandemic.
In the other hand, the National Assembly member for Latrikunda Sabiji, Sekou Marong, said in the issue of the number of days for extension, either 45 or 21, the president already had the power to declare 21 days of state of emergency. For that being the reason, what the National Assembly members should look into is the 45 days extension, also giving his reasons for voting for 45 days. Meanwhile, the Constitution of the Gambia says that the motion must get a backing for the 3 voters of the parliament members before it can be regulated. It was first extended by the parliament on 27th March after an initial 7-day declaration by President Adama Barrow. Reporting for Star TV News, I am Dado Chan.
The Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs of the Republic of the Gambia, Honorable Mambrou Njai, in his capacity as the current chairman of the Council of Ministers of the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, on Wednesday, 13 May 2020, held an extensive telephone conversation with the Secretary General of the organization, His Excellency Giorgio Rebelo Pinto Chikoti, on the COVID-19 emergency support to member countries and the status of the ACP-EU post-Cotonou agreement negotiation. Jacqueline Colley reports.
Minister Njai, who assumed the chairmanship of the OACPS Council of Ministries in February 2020, was informed that the organization allocated 25 million euros to member states through the World Health Organization as emergency support to combat COVID-19. The OACPS is also reviewing the balance of resources from the intra-ACP envelope to provide post-COVID-19 support to member states. The minister was also updated on the ongoing reconstruction of the sectarian and appointment of senior staffs. Honorable Njai used the opportunity to congratulate the new Secretary General on his appointment and the association's adoption of the revised Georgetown Agreement, which seeks to reposition the OACPS into an effective global player committed to multilateralism and the development goals of its member states. The minister assured the Secretary General of the Gambia's continued support to the OACPS. The African, Caribbean and Pacific groups of states was established by the Georgetown Agreement in 1975. It is composed of 79 African, Caribbean and Pacific states, all of which serve Cuba, and signatories to the Cotonou Agreement, also known as the ACP-EU Partnership Agreement. ACP, renamed Organization of Africa, Caribbean and Pacific States, following the adoption of the revised Georgetown Agreement, aims to support the sustainable development of member states and their gradual integration into the global economy, which entails making poverty reduction a matter of priority and establishing a new, fairer and more equitable world order. There are 48 countries from sub-Saharan Africa, 16 from Caribbean and 15 from the Pacific. Jacqueline Corey, reporting for Star TV News.
In a press release sent to media houses by the Ministry of Finance, Minister Mambrou Njai welcomes World Bank $30 million grant support, the release reads. Following the announcement of a $30 million development policy grant to the Gambia, the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, Honorable Mambrou Njai, on behalf of the government of the Gambia, has on Friday expressed gratitude to the World Bank Board of Executive Directors for the development assistance. It shows that as a country we are doing well economically and have successfully reached the targets set despite the challenges we face, said Honorable Njai, while thanking his team and the President of the country, His Excellency President Adama Barrow, for creating the enabling environment. It is based on the economic performances of the country that we can access all these funds, and we hope to be able to sustain these performances. The World Bank grant will help enhance the financial and operational performances of NAWEC to provide cheaper, more reliable and cleaner energy. Additionally, it will support the restructuring and refinancing of the telecom infrastructure to strengthen the digital economy. The release ends. The Gambia Police Force has set emergency tax regulation as a result of the global pandemic in the Gambia, which includes ways in minimizing social distancing, price hiking on essential commodities, hoarding of goods, and re-export of essential commodities. While Jacqueline Colley has more on this report.
The Gambia Police Force set up these regulations in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and the central government to enforce social distancing, the hiking of price on essential commodities, hoarding of goods, and the re-export of essential commodities. ASP Lamin Njai, the public relations officer of the Gambia Police Force, said on this issue of enforcing social distancing, his force has set up task force in almost all regions.
From the beginning, we've created task force all over the regions of the country, beginning from Banjul to KM, West Coast, up to Basse. All these regions have their own task force, which goes around enforcing the social distancing regulations. But also we have realized that the compliance level has been much to be desired, and so this is why we've come up with a new operation which is specifically to look into the issue of physical and social distancing. Recently, I'm sure if you are aware, if you've been following our operations, you've seen that we have launched a new operation in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and the central government to be able to enforce the physical distancing within market places, within public places like car parks and other areas, junctions, and even within communities, so that people will adhere to this social distancing in order to be able to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
ASP Njai lamented that they have realized that lots of shopkeepers and other enterprises that deal with essential commodities increase prices on commodities, which was brought to their notice.
You remember when coronavirus started, all of a sudden we saw that the market prices of commodities have increased. And so this is why government came up with a price regulation. And so the Gambia Police Force is to enforce this price regulation. Part of that regulation is the fact that there is already a price ceiling for all commodities, and business people need not to price above that. So we were enforcing that. And also part of the same regulation too is the hoarding, that is to keep the goods from people, so that there is the issue of it's not available when it is available. That too, we look into it.
Furthermore, Njai revealed that they have intelligence officers in the markets enforcing and seeing to it that shopkeepers and business people that are found wanting of hiking prices and re-exporting the essential commodities are dealt with according to the law. He further expressed that a lot of shopkeepers across the country who have been found wanting have been taken to court and fined with various fine rates ranging from $150,000 to $50,000.
But the good news is that a lot of people are complying with that. Most business people have now stabilized their prices, and they are not definitely hiking the prices. Although we have pockets of some who are still doing it, but that level is sort of regulated. Also, we have the emergency regulation on transport fares, public transport capacity and fare as well. We have a regulation that says drivers should carry half of the capacity prescribed by law. That is before the emergency regulation. So therefore, the police are out to ensure that this is geared towards having people maintain the social distancing even within the vehicle. And so this is why if you are carrying 14 passengers before, now you are allowed to carry 7 passengers. If you are carrying 26 passengers, you are allowed to carry 13 passengers. So that like that people can maintain the physical distancing inside the vehicle as well as prevent the spread of coronavirus. Also, the part of that regulation too is the fact that prices must remain the way where they have been, just the same as the essential commodity prices.
He advised the public to adhere to these regulations and join hands with them to make work easier and drive out COVID-19. Jacqueline Coley, reporting for Star TV News.
As Korite Eid is approaching, textile shopkeepers complain lack of customers this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic compared to the previous years. Our reporter Maria Madam had an interview with the shopkeepers and she now reports.
Thousands of Muslims across the globe are expected to perform Eid as Ramadan ends this week. Over the years, textile business has always been doing well. But this year, due to the COVID-19, it turns out to be a great challenge for textile shop owners compared to the previous years. Mohammed, a shopkeeper, expressed disappointment over the sales he made compared to last year due to the pandemic. He also mentioned that they believe the virus exists and they are adhering to the preventive measures put in place by WHO, which includes social distancing. Malik, another shopkeeper, also made similar remarks, indicating that business is very slow this year compared to last year, even though they open from morning for people to come because they are 100 meters away from the market. He added that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, customers are not showing up. He also said that they are paying attention to the social distancing and adhering to the preventive measures. Maria Madam, reporting for Star TV News.
As Eid is fast approaching, this is normally the time that tailors are busy making money, but this year is far different from the previous years as a result of the global pandemic, which has affected businesses everywhere, including tailors and hairdressers, who reveals to Star TV that businesses is not as usual as many customers feel reluctant to buy fabrics and take it to the tailoring shop or visit hairdressers, as the main priorities for Gambians is food and survival from the global pandemic. Matisenko reports.
From the stereotype of being shady and always ready to sew magnificent outfits for their customers, tailors lamented that they are facing a lot of difficulties due to the COVID-19 global pandemic. Before the pandemic, when it's 2 weeks to the Eid, they normally spend the night at their shops in order to meet the demands of their customers. But the reverse is the case. They have been given strict measures as to when to open and when to close their shops, meaning they have just 5 hours to work out of 24 hours, which really has a negative impact on their business. Lamin Job, a tailor, revealed that they are yet to see their customers, as he added that they bought fabrics with their own money, sew them and hang them as a strategy for their customers to know that they are operating on their business. He also appeals to the Kanifing Municipal Council, KMC, to understand that business is not as effective as it was. A tailoring business owner told Star TV that they are really facing difficult moments because they normally pay their tailors every Saturday, but due to the pandemic and the state of emergency, they are unable to pay their tailors much more pay the rent of the shop. She continued by saying that despite the slowdown of the business, they are still adhering to the measures to prevent the spread of the COVID-19. However, when a customer comes in, he or she has to wash his or her hands before entering the shop, and they themselves are also practicing physical distancing. Amin Jai, a hairdresser, said she is undergoing difficult times due to the measures put in place as when to open and close the shop. She indicated that every morning she has to sit near a tailoring shop to do some hair in order to avoid disappointing her customers, and by 2 p.m. she will open her own shop with few girls in the salon to continue their work. Then by 6 she has to close her shop, which is really not favorable to her. Reporting for Star TV News, I am Mati Senghor.
With the aim of transforming the capital city of Banjul to a more conducive place, CityLink Austin Banjul project, funded by the European Union in collaboration with Banjul City Council and the coalition of civil society organizations in Banjul, on Saturday implemented a beach cleaning exercise at the Banjul Wharf Beach. Our reporter Maria Madam covered the exercise and she reports.
The cleaning exercise is part of the CityLink Austin Banjul project, Sustainable City Development. On the team, Natati Perry Bisset. This exercise will increase the air conducive atmosphere and pollution absorption, and also equally mitigate the high degradable soil erosion and water rising in Banjul. The public relations officer of CityLink Austin Banjul, Annette Camara, said they have problem on sustainability, and this project is mainly focusing on sustainability, and they expect Banjulians to take ownership for it to continue happening. As for the sea urges people to clean their vicinities, as a clean environment is a healthy environment. The project will be launched in months' time, and it will last for 3 years. The beach cleaning exercise will be taking place once a month. Reporting for Star TV News, I am Maria Madem.
And now the news beyond our borders. Political campaigns in Burundi have ended ahead of Wednesday's general election. They have been made by violence and hate speech, with both sides blaming one another. And Al Jazeera's Katrin Saul reports health experts are concerned there are not enough restrictions to help contain the spread of COVID-19.
Supporters of Burundi's main opposition candidate Agathon Rwasa on the streets of the capital, Bujumbura. They hope that he'll win Wednesday's general election. He has run for president twice before, but lost. He says his victory was stolen by President Pierre Nkurunziza, who's not standing this time. Campaigns have been marred by sporadic violence between supporters of the ruling CNDD-FDD party and Rwasa's Congress for Liberty party. Government officials say 3 people have died, others injured and many arrested.
All of this is meant to intimidate the opposition so as to guarantee the victory of the ruling party. But this is quietly a nonsense.
At the other end of town, thousands attend the ruling party's final campaign. President Nkurunziza accompanies his preferred candidate, Evariste Ndayishimiye, whose supporters are confident victory belongs to them. Ndayishimiye is one of the most influential politicians in Burundi and a close ally of the president. He's a former rebel fighter who survived the ethnic cleansing of students of Hutu ethnicity at the University of Burundi in 1985. The president calls him a national hero.
He was the first to arrive in Bujumbura to prepare for our arrival after signing the peace deal that ended the civil war. It was a brave move. His job was also to integrate the army and police, which he did successfully. He also played a big role in establishing CNDD-FDD as a formidable political party.
Burundi is pushing ahead with the election despite the coronavirus pandemic. The country has at least 24 confirmed cases and recently expelled some World Health Organization workers after their criticism the government response has been inadequate. The president says the situation is under control.
Burundi is the only country where people are still gathering for public and religious holidays. God knows what is happening in the world, and that's whom we are turning to for protection.
Burundi will be choosing a president, MPs, and municipal representatives in the poll that will have no international observers. Candidates have promised to fix the struggling economy, create jobs, unify the country. Some of the 5 million voters are survivors of a 12-year ethnic-based civil war that started in 1993 and of violence in the 2015 election. And they say all they want is a peaceful outcome. Catherine Soy, Al Jazeera.
Millions of tourists normally flock to Kenya's wildlife reserves, but international arrivals into the country have been stopped because of the coronavirus pandemic, and the loss of tourism dollars is putting conservation projects at risk. Al Jazeera's Malcolm Webb reports from Nairobi.
These lions don't know it, but the coronavirus is a danger to them too. While they probably can't get the virus, the pandemic does, indirectly, threaten their habitat. They live in a nature reserve where Nicholas Koyeo normally guides tourists who come to see endangered animals. It's near Kenya's capital, Nairobi. The government suspended international flights nearly 2 months ago. No foreign tourists have come here since.
It's actually a bit worrying because if we don't actually receive clients in the country, then I'm afraid that lots of jobs are actually going to be lost.
Visitors normally eat and sleep in the camp where Nicholas worked. It's had to temporarily close. Normally, in camps like this, all the beds are fully booked during the peak seasons. More than 2 million foreign tourists visited Kenya last year. Most of them come here to see the wildlife that lives in the reserves. And the money they spend creates millions of jobs and provides crucial funding for conservation. The fees charged for visiting reserves and camps pay for the salaries of rangers who protect animals from poachers. The communities living nearby depend on the incomes of those employed in the sector, and if livelihoods are lost, people are forced to find other ways to survive.
Things like poaching, either for household protein supplement or cutting down of trees to supplement household income, and that is tied to the harsh economic realities occasioned by COVID-19.
The Nairobi Reserve is unique in that it sits just on the edge of the city. Conservationists say, in the long run, if tourism isn't economically viable, reserve land will be used for farming or property development instead. Just outside the park is a sanctuary for orphaned animals. These walkways are usually teeming with visiting schoolchildren. The warden told us educating local community is key to conserving wildlife and its environment.
Most of our domestic tourists come from up country. These are mainly the schools, and they are no longer coming because the schools were closed. Due to the current status, the revenue again has gone down.
Nobody here expects things to change before the coronavirus restrictions are lifted. Conservationists say they're looking for other ways to fund the reserves, so the wildlife within them and the people around them can have a future. Malcolm Webb, Al Jazeera, Nairobi, Kenya.
Parts of Europe are beginning to reopen after coronavirus movement curbs are slowly lifted. Greece has reopened more than 500 of its beaches to domestic tourists. But the continent's worst-hit country, the UK, is still considering how and when to reopen schools. And infections in Russia are still rising at an alarming rate. Well, Al Jazeera's Suni Galago reports.
Soaring temperatures, high humidity. The first heat wave of the year has descended on Greece. In the capital, Athens, the easing of the lockdown did little to tempt people onto its streets. Instead, it was the beaches that many drifted towards. Travel across the mainland will be allowed from Monday, but it will be another week after that before its islands will allow visitors again. Slowly, the country continues to open up. Its churches unlocked their doors to the faithful for the first time in 2 months.
I'm taking precautions because they ordered it, not so much because I'm afraid. I always kept distancing and kept apart from my grandchildren.
In the UK, the lockdown has been extended until at least the end of June. The warmer weather has tempted few onto the beaches here. Confusion over the government's new guidelines remains, as well as efforts to reopen schools, while government ministers and scientists attempt to calm fears that allowing children back could cause infections to rise.
It does seem, from what we know now, that children are less capable of spreading it, even if they get the infection, and certainly are at very low risk of getting ill from the disease.
From one country trying to emerge from lockdown to another still in self-isolation, Russia has the world's second fastest rate of new infections behind the United States, with Moscow the epicenter of its epidemic. More than 9,700 new cases were recorded on Sunday. The number of deaths from COVID-19 has now surpassed 2,600, much lower compared to the US, UK and Italy. But questions still remain about how Russia is registering those deaths and whether it's attributing them to other causes. Sonia Gallego, Al Jazeera.
Egyptians are accusing the government of putting their lives at risk by building a flyover so close to their apartment block near the capital, Cairo. The transport minister said residents who want to move will be compensated, but many Egyptians say the project is yet another example of corruption within the government. Al Jazeera's Victoria Gadinbai reports.
In Giza, on the outskirts of Egypt's capital, Cairo, a new flyover is being built. It's one of the many large projects launched by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to fix the country's finances and win the trust of the people. But this is the reality for Egyptians living in apartments close by. The flyover is centimetres from their homes, and in some cases their balconies look straight out onto the road.
This flyover is dangerous. Now there's sunlight, but after they're completed, my flat will turn into something that resembles a grave or a warehouse. The first, second and third floors will never ever receive sunlight again.
The road's been planned for several years and once completed will link Giza's northern and southern districts. It's estimated that 750,000 cars a day will use it. But images such as this on social media ridicule the government's perceived incompetence.
Some floors were completely buried under the flyover while the balconies of others were blocked. We were shocked to find burglars trying to break into some of the apartments.
Opponents also accuse Sisi's government of corruption. They're demanding to know how planning permission was granted to build a flyover in a densely populated residential area.
The street was very wide and our apartment was expensive when we bought it. Then 2 days ago, the transport minister came out here and simply said, those 10 or 20 apartments don't matter, so I'll disregard them. No, it's important. We're not living in a random place here. You cannot speak to us like this.
The 12-kilometre-long project is costing $317 million and is expected to be finished later this year. The Transport Minister says residents will be compensated by the government and offered the chance to relocate. But for many, it's too little, too late. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera.
And before we end the news, Erika of our main headlines. Finance Minister Njai and ACP Secretary General hold telebriefing on COVID-19 support to the member states post-Cotonou negotiations. Gambia Police Force sets emergency tax regulations to help curb the spread of COVID-19. Textile shop owners hit hard by COVID-19 as security approaches. CityLink Austin Banjul implements a beach cleaning exercise. Political campaigns and ahead of elections in Burundi. Lack of funds put conservation projects at risk in Kenya. Parts of Europe ease coronavirus curves as new infections drop. Well, that's all for this edition of today's News at 8. Please do enjoy the rest of our programs and join us tomorrow for more news. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful night. It's bye for now.